had Musa reached the Midian that he threw himself under a tree to rest. He was so hungry and so tired. The soles of his feet felt as if they had worn out from hard walking on sand and rocks and from all of the dust. He did not even have any money to buy a new pair of sandals, nor to buy any food or drink. At the watering hole, he saw some men who were letting their animals have some water. Waiting behind them were two young women with a tiny flock of sheep. Musa sensed that the women were in need of his help. Forgetting all about his own thirst, he drew nearer to them. He called out to the woman, "What's wrong? Why don't you water your sheep?" And the women told Musa that they couldn't because the water hole was too crowded with the men and their animals. Upon hearing that, Musa got up. Musa was surprised that the women were even shepherding to begin with. Back then, women did not do such things. Only men were supposed to do that. It's a hard and tiring job, and one needs to be very alert and strong. Musa asked, "Why are you shepherding?" The younger sister said, "Our father is an old man. His health is too poor for him to go outdoors to pasture the sheep, and we have no husbands or brothers." Musa alayhi salam said, "I will water the sheep for you." And he steered the sheep towards the water, allowing them to drink. The men grumbled a little at first, but upon seeing how big and strong Musa was, they stopped grumbling and looked away. They knew not to mess with him. The two young women smiled and were very grateful for Musa's kind help. Musa sat back down under the cool shade of the tree, and the women took their flock of sheep back home. The young ladies returned home earlier than usual, which surprised their father. He always expected them home late in the evening, after all of the other men had left with their animals. The daughters related the incident at the oasis, which was the reason that they were home so early that day. The father sent one of his daughters to invite the stranger to his home. Bashfully, the woman approached Musa and delivered the message. "My father is grateful for what you have done for us. He invites you to our home so that he can thank you personally." Musa welcomed the invitation, and he accompanied the lady to see her father. Musa could see that they lived comfortably and happy and peaceful as a family. He introduced himself, and he told the old man about the misfortune that had befallen him and had made him flee from Egypt. The old man said, "Fear not, you have escaped from the wrongdoers." The father was old and needed a young man to help and care for the animals. After talking to Musa, the father found him to be a good man, so he offered one of his daughters to him in marriage. Musa agreed and helped the old man for many years. The marriage was a happy one, and they all prospered due to Musa's hard work and good judgment. Time passed, and he lived in seclusion far away from his family and people. This period of 10 years was a very important one for his life. It was a period of major preparation. Certainly, Musa's mind was absorbed in the stars every night. He followed the sun rise and the sun set every day, and he thought about the water and the earth and the winds and the dirt. He thought about Allah and how much Allah had blessed him. He had committed a grave sin, but yet he was able to marry this beautiful wife and have a beautiful family in charge of a nice farm. But of course, he was also immersed in the beauty of Allah and the religion of Islam. This was the same Islam of his forefathers, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. His forefather Yaqub was the grandson of Prophet Ibrahim, may Allah be pleased with him. And Musa, after all, being one of the descendants of Prophet Ibrahim, knew that there was something special about himself and why Allah had saved him. Many years later, Musa decided to travel with his family. He was content with his life and had completely forgotten the troubles in Egypt, but something was missing. There was a vague homesickness that had risen up in his heart, and he wanted to return to Egypt. He was fast and firm in making his decision, telling his wife, "Tomorrow we shall leave for Egypt." His wife was afraid and caught off guard, but she obeyed her husband. Never before had her husband made such a big decision so quickly. Musa left Midian with his family and traveled through the desert until he reached a mountain. There, Musa discovered that he had lost his way. He sought Allah's direction and was shown the right course. At nightfall, they reached a place to rest. And this is where everything started to make sense. He saw a small fire far off in the distance. Since it was very cold, he went to go fetch a burning log to warm his family. As he approached the fire, he noticed something strange. The fire was only on one bush and did not spread to the other bushes or trees. At that same time, the bushes didn't burn up and become ashed. They just stayed there, burning continuously. Then Musa heard a voice say, "Oh Musa, I am your Lord. Therefore, in my presence, take off your shoes." Musa did what he was ordered. Allah told Musa that he was to become a prophet. His mission was to go back to Egypt and visit the Pharaoh and tell him that there was no God but Allah. If the Pharaoh and his people did not change their evil ways, Allah would punish them. This was why Musa was headed to Egypt. He knew there was a better reason. Then Allah said, "What is that in your right hand, O Musa?" And he answered, "This is my stick on which I lean, and for which I beat down the branches for my sheep, and for which I find other uses." Prophet Musa used to walk with a stick to help him with his balance. Do any of your grandparents walk with a stick, boys and girls? Allah said, "Throw it, O Musa." And when he threw the stick, it hit the ground and started to move by itself. At first, Musa stood there gazing at it. Then he turned and started to run. Allah told Musa not to run because as long as Allah was with him, there was nothing to be afraid of. Musa came back and looked at the stick again. It had turned into a brown snake, slithering and hissing on the ground. Allah spoke, "Fear not, ingratitude. We shall return it to its former state." Musa bent down to pick up the tail of the snake, and as soon as he grabbed it, the snake turned back into a rigid piece of wood. Then Allah ordered Musa to place his hand on his chest, and when Musa did this with his right hand, it radiated with light. To make his hand normal again, he simply put his hand back on his chest. This, boys and girls, was the revelation to Prophet Musa. Allah had decreed that he was one of Allah's messengers, and Allah was calling on him. Allah ordered Musa to go to the Pharaoh with these two miracles and to warn him of Allah's commands. Before Musa left the blazing bush, he asked Allah to make him brave and to let him bring his brother Harun along with him for support. Allah granted both of these requests to Prophet Musa and assured him that he and his followers would win over the Pharaoh. Can you believe it, boys and girls? A snake? Yikes! Oh, I don't like snakes. But I know that they are one of Allah's creations, so I must respect them and appreciate them. Allah's power is so great, mashallah. Imagine a piece of wood turning into a snake, then back into a stick. Allah is so magnificent. We can only begin to discuss all of his bounties. Well, unfortunately, boys and girls, that's all of the time that we have today for Prophet Musa's story. It seems like we will have to continue this great story tomorrow. Same time, same place. I'm so excited to find out what happens to Prophet Musa next when he returns to face the Pharaoh, the man who originally wanted him dead, yet ended up raising him like a son. How about you, boys and girls? Are you excited too? Now, before we end off today, let's just recap with a few questions. Number 1, why did the Pharaoh order all of the baby boys killed? 2, what did Allah tell Musa's mother to do with baby Musa when he was born? 3, why did Prophet Musa flee Egypt? And lastly, what happened when Musa threw his walking stick on the ground? Okay, boys and girls, well, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in for Storytime with me, Sophia, and I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah, for part 2 of this wonderful story of Prophet Musa. Assalamu alaikum.